like to call to order the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. This is Mike Dissett, Chair, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this belatedly put together Zoom meeting because of the inclement weather. Thank you all for attending, both committee members and applicants and other members of the public who are tuning in. We will be reviewing 9 projects tonight. The way that this happens is that the order on the agenda will be followed, and each applicant, we ask that they take approximately 10 to 15 minutes per project, and assume that the committee has read your applications and is aware of its details. But we are certainly eager to hear from you as to what you think are the most important aspects of your project, as well as any additional information and highlights that you think are not adequately addressed in your application. With each applicant, after the presentation, there will be questions and comments from the committee, and then I will open up to any questions or comments from the public. I think that about covers it. So let's get started. And a reminder to everyone that the Community Preservation Committee is we do not appropriate funds. We recommend to the City Council the appropriation of funds for specific projects in specific amounts with any specific conditions which we feel are appropriate. With that said, I'd like to begin with the CPA project amendment regarding the Woodman Park project, which was addressed last
Hi, Mike.
year. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, it's Rachel. I just wanted to remind you to do roll call.
Oh, yeah, I always do that. Okay. Thank you. Good to have a backstop. Okay, I'll take the roll call. Please indicate if you're present. Charles Griffin.
Present.
Tom O'Brien. Tom O'Brien. Joe Texera.
Here.
Jamie Gagnon.
Here.
Jennifer Bluestein.
Here.
Biff Baus. Biff, are you here? Thought I saw him.
He is. Can't hear him.
It's like he's there,
Okay.
but we can't hear.
He did say here twice.
Okay. Biff, we're counting you here. Andrew Wheatman.
Here.
Jane Healy.
Here.
Mike Dissett, Chair, is present. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. We have back to the Woodman Park amendment. Who is presenting tonight?
That would be me, Kim Turner.
Hello, Kim. You
Hi,
have the
Mike.
floor.
Thank you so much. Sorry not to be all in person today, but happy that we could pivot to Zoom tonight. So I'm here tonight to request a formal amendment for this project. Caitlin, if you want to skip to the next slide, please. This project has come before you twice before. In 2023, you approved $57,570 towards an accessibility project at the front of the park where we improved accessibility to the playground. And then in 2024, you approved funding for $98,563 to renovate the court, which is also at the front of the park. I'm happy to announce that both projects have come in under budget. We have roughly $50,000 left over from the 2 accounts. Our next phase of this project, which is not before you tonight, but which we intend to apply for in the next round, is to improve the pedestrian and vehicular circulation at the front of the park. Next slide, please. So just to give a brief overview of where we are at, the accessibility project, which again was approved in 2023, this was the before picture. It shows sort of this rundown plastic edging, some degraded timber stairs and timber edging, and some degraded brick walkway. If you want to go to the next slide, this is what it looks like today. So the project is complete, and you can see that we've taken out all the plastic edging and the degraded timbers. We've regraded around the playground and created a switchback walkway, which brings users up to the right across the front of the playground and into the space. We were able to reuse the bricks from the prior walkway, which a lot of them had inscribed names on them, to create sort of an entry plaza. And then the switchback walkway is sort of semi-pervious material that is ADA accessible for users to get up into the space. Next slide, please. Then similarly, last year, the court restoration project, these are the pictures from before. The court was very heavily degraded with lots of cracking, very much outdated site amenities. And if you go to the next slide, this is what it looks like today. This was just prior to the final striping going on, but this is near completion pictures. It is fully completed now. We were able to also install some drainage on the western edge of this court so that we won't get the same washout that we had experienced before, but very well celebrated by the community and used very heavily. Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned, the next phase we anticipate for this park project will be to improve the vehicular and pedestrian circulation at the front of the park and make it a little bit more welcoming for people visiting the park. We had thought about making a request to keep the remaining funding in the accounts and come back to you with a request for construction next year. But after discussing with the chair and the finance director, we thought it might be a cleaner way to go to return the funding to the CPC, but make at this point a formal request for $2,250 right now to hire a surveyor to create a base plan for the work that we envision for phase 3 of the project, which again, we would come back before you with a formal submission and a design and a formal quote, which we anticipate will run roughly $70,000 for the next phase of the project. But again, next year would come back with a formal request and cost estimates. One other thing that is not included in the application, which I would like to make you aware of, we have had a request from a couple of residents in the neighborhood to potentially restripe the pickleball to one side of the basketball court. So I think at this point, we would like to ask that the just above $2,600 that's left in the court project might stay there for the time being until we can review that potential change with the Parks Commission and the resident to see if it makes sense to add an additional set of pickleball striping there. I don't anticipate that it will be much more than the $2,600 that's sitting in that account. But other than that, we would close out the rest of the project. And I believe, Caitlin, there might just be one final slide, or maybe that's it.
That's it.
That's it. All right. So that's all I have for this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
A couple questions. The 2250 in terms of creating the base plan with a surveyor, I assume that's going to be depicting existing conditions, so you can plan off of that.
Correct.
Okay, my next question speaks to the issue of whether creating a base plan is in some fashion connected with the scope of the original two projects. It seems to me that and let me just ask you, in creating a base plan, would it integrate the work that's already been done, especially with regard to accessibility? In other words, integrate with the new work you've just completed with the planned work in the parking lot.
It would, yeah. So it would capture the work that had been done and give definitive spot grades for the ramp work and its connection to the existing parking area. And it would help us build upon that. So any additional improvements we would make to the park would ensure that we are, compliant with ADA regulations and sort of seamlessly integrate both the court and the playground and the ramp work with any additional improvements to the parking and walkway areas at the front of the park.
Thank you. Next question is the 2,600 basically holding back from the prior project on the restriping? Do you have community input with regard to any pros and cons of who would use it more? The
Sure.
basketballers versus the pickleballers?
Yeah, so the reason this request came through from a resident in the area was the way that the current striping is there's a pickleball court that's striped on top of the basketball court in the same orientation as the basketball court. And that was to meet space requirements for pickleball play. There's been a request to potentially stripe a smaller pickleball court perpendicular and on one side of the basketball court so that basketball players and pickleball players could use the court simultaneously. We're in very early stages talking with a sport court contractor who did our original striping. This will obviously have to go back to the Parks Commission for their review in a public setting as well. So I believe we'll have a pretty quick turnaround, and once we have pricing and can go before the Parks Commission in the next month or two, I expect that the decision will be made fairly quickly, but it will have to be vetted through a public process.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? No hands raised. Okay, any questions or comments from the public? Okay, I have a point of order here, and that is it feels to me like we are considering this in connection with the rest of the new applications docket, and it would then end up being determined by the committee in a month. There is a possibility, since it's an amendment to existing project, that we could discuss and determine it tonight, and that would accomplish two things. One, get this work moving, and because it would not need to go to city council, I don't believe, unless Andy has a different take on that. And we would get a return of the balance into the coffers, which we could consider using on new projects. Any discussion about how we handle this tonight? Andy?
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to indicate that, yeah, I agree. There's no need to go back to the city council for this modification or tweak.
Okay, good. Committee members, any discussion about the how you would like to handle this tonight? Decide it tonight, or wait until determination of the other projects?
I would like,
Chuck, go ahead.
I'd like to see it decided tonight unless there's a reason not to.
Okay. Jane?
I agree.
Agree.
Okay, good. Hearing no naysayers, then I will entertain a motion, and I'd like to do this twofold. One is a motion with regard to the amendment as to using the 2250 for the base plan. Let's do that first. I'll entertain a motion for to consider that.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, then the motion to be voted on right now, and we'll do it by roll call, is that there would be used $2,250 to hire a surveyor to create a base plan in anticipation of the next phase of the project. And that is an amendment to the prior project. Okay. Roll call. Chuck Griffin,
yes.
Tom O'Brien, Joe Texera,
Yes.
Jamie Gagnon,
Yes.
Jennifer Bluestein,
Yes.
Biff Baus,
Yes.
Andrea Wheatman,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Jane, okay, chair votes yes. All right, so we've taken care of that. Next, I'll entertain a motion with regard to continuing to hold of the unused balance in the prior projects, the amount of $2,600 until it is determined whether the re-striping of the court will take place. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Chuck Griffin,
yes.
Joe Texera,
Yes.
Jamie Gagnon,
Yes.
Jennifer Bluestein,
Yes.
Biff Baus,
Yes.
Andrea Wheatman,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Okay, thank you, Kim. Next item, a new project being presented, priority housing needs from the Newburyport Affordable Housing Trust, request in the amount of $200,000. Who's presenting tonight?
Chair,
Sorry.
we have Madeline Nash presenting and also letting you know that it appears Tom O'Brien has joined the meeting.
Okay. Hello, Tom. Hello, Madeline. Madeline, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much. Sorry, I can't see you. Is my camera on? I'm just curious about how this is working. Can you see me? No.
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. In any case, thank you for accepting this request from the Affordable Housing Trust. We were not planning originally on submitting a request to the CPC, but then we had the opportunity to commit some funds to the redevelopment of the Brown School, which is actually something that the Housing Trust has been waiting to do for many years. So we were very happy to have the opportunity to contribute to the future success for the redevelopment of the Brown School. I'm sure you all have been following this in the news. And we are particularly excited about the fact that as proposed by Zeta Insight, the property will be redeveloped to be 100% affordable with a mix of income levels for seniors at 30% area median income and 60% area median income. We have had the opportunity to review some of the materials related to Zeta Insight's proposal, and we feel like it is a sound concept and we wanted to be supportive of it. So as I think you're aware, we have committed $450,000 to the project as proposed. And in doing so, we have reduced the funds that are available to the trust for housing initiatives in the community. And so we are submitting this request with the feeling that we want to replenish some of our funds that will be available for future initiatives. One of the things that we're thinking about right now is increasing the amount of funding available for down payment assistance to first-time home buyers. We are continuing to work with the Pettingill House for assistance to households in Newburyport that are having trouble making their rental payments for a variety of different types of reasons, or moving into a apartment in Newburyport and just need a little bit of assistance to cover the rent or to move into an apartment. And we have, a couple of other initiatives that are ongoing that are administered by the trust with assistance from the planning department. We like to have funds available for opportunities that we may not even know about today. So we feel like it's important for the trust to be able to respond to development opportunities that may come to the city in a timely fashion. So those are the reasons for our request. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Madeline. I have a question. If you could clarify for me the information that you provided that was the summary of the AHT available funds, showing a total of 1.1 million. And is that prior to, or does that include the committed 450,000 to the Brown School?
Well, I'm going to answer that question, but I'm glad Caitlin's on so that she can correct me if I'm not right. But my understanding that includes the 450,000. Is that correct?
Okay.
And that
Yep, that's correct. It includes it right now. You can see on here the list. There is a note here that, this grant was, appropriated to the Brown School by a vote on January 22nd. And that's the
Okay.
same note for the four on here.
Right.
Okay.
So when the 450,000 is deducted from the funds available to the trust, we have approximately 263,000 that is not already committed to a specific activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that clarifies it for me. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Any hands raised? No. Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Madeline.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Next, we have the Natural Playground and Community Athletic Space at River Valley Charter School. Requested amount $446,563. And who's presenting tonight?
Hi, I'm Karen Cuse, and I am the Executive Director of River Valley Charter School. I also have with me Lydia Sisson, a parent and project supporter. Is Lydia able to be? Okay, super. We are very excited to be here tonight and grateful for you to consider this project. River Valley Charter School is a public charter school located at 2 Perry Way in Newburyport. We opened our doors just over 25 years ago in 1999. We serve 288 students in grades K through 8. We were the first ever public charter Montessori school in Massachusetts. Very exciting. And for those of you who are wondering what Montessori is, it's an amazing way of teaching and learning developed by an Italian physician named Maria Montessori. And it's very experiential, very hands-on. It is very much aligned with the child's development. And it is basically a well-prepared, hands-on environment that allows for exploration. And we instill a love of learning while guiding children to develop independence, concentration, creativity, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. And we believe this project will lend itself to all those things. What's so exciting for us is that we sat down. I'm new to Newburyport and new to River Valley Charter School, definitely not new to Montessori education. I have been leading Montessori schools for over 2 decades. And when I got here, we were thinking of ways that we could be more involved in the community. Simultaneously, we had this incredible playground and outdoor environment project on the horizon. And we thought, why not marry the two? And that's when we started talking about CPC and the CPA. When I got to the school and I saw the playground, I've been in education for 36 years. I have been leading Montessori schools for well over 2 decades. I was a little mortified at the playground, the condition of it, but also the lack of permeable materials, a lack of environmental friendly materials. And we really believe in sustainability and would like something very sustainable and beautiful that the community can enjoy. After sitting in my seat for 8+ months, I have witnessed so many incidents, accidents, and injuries. And this is a safety issue. Right there in this photo, you can see monkey bars that no longer have monkey bars on them. Those are the 2 poles that would hold the monkey bars. We took them down because they were broken. We took the Gaga pit down. Slowly, our playground is dwindling away. Outdated metal equipment is really wearing and resulting in injuries and safety issues. It's also in very close proximity to parking and traffic flow. We'd like to fix that. We feel strongly that the prescribed play of this playground design as it was forces kids to take risks that they might not be developmentally ready for, and therefore more injuries occur. And it's sadly, it's not a climate resilience playground, and we would like to have a space that can be adaptable to the changing climate, increased heat, flooding, drought, etc.
Can we go to the next slide, Caitlin? Thank you. So my name's Lydia, and thanks for having us. So as Karen said, over a year ago, we started this grounds redesign project and process at River Valley Charter School. And we worked with the school community, teachers, and also we've been working with landscape architects and engineers, and really come to hold 4 goals as our priorities for the campus. The first being that we really embody the natural environment. So trying to connect children with the natural environment of the Merrimack Valley and designing the space with climate resilience in mind. We're wanting to use sustainable materials, and so focusing on sustainability and using the space as a space that can educate users in sustainable practices. And then versatility, we want to make sure that this space can be used by a diverse audience and that all different abilities can be using this space. And the last pillar is community. River Valley Charter School wants to be a welcoming space that fosters community connections. They do that very well inside of the school and also want to open the doors and the gates, I guess, of the playground and athletic space to the broader community. All of these pillars really rooted the school in a design that embodies those, which is the natural playground design. And I'll let Karen go to the next slide and tell you a little bit more about natural playgrounds.
So we've put a lot of work and thought into what would be an amazing, sustainable, and long-lasting design for the community. And natural playgrounds last forever. They encourage kids to connect with nature, which is not happening enough nowadays. We studies show that physical fitness is linked to brain health, and outdoor play even boosts academic performance. Most importantly, children actually prefer playing in environments that improve their overall well-being, intelligence, and safety. And we want to encourage kids, not just our River Valley kids, but our Newburyport kids, to get outside.
And you can see a couple of these other examples. If you can go to the next slide, often made with locally sourced natural materials using more permeable surfacing. And if you can go to the next slide, really also incorporating some traditional things like slides, things that kids love, but really working within the natural topography of a space. Next slide, please. So the proposed project that we submitted to your committee is that we will transform the grounds to include athletic fields and playgrounds on both sides of the school building. And funding would allow us to create natural playground spaces that are fully accessible on both sides, as well as 2 additional athletic spaces. And really, we're going to be reducing a lot of impervious surface and making more space for play through this, and really focusing on climate resilience within the entire design. If you can go to the next slide, you can see the design. The side closest to Low Street is the larger play space geared more for K through 6th grade. And there's a full athletic field there. And then on the left side of the building is play that is designed more for a middle school age group, although it will be accessible to all different ages, and also an athletic space there. Okay, next slide, please.
We believe that an investment in CPA funding will mean that our playgrounds and athletic fields will be open to the public, and we're excited about that possibility. This would happen when school's not in session. That means after school hours, weekends, school breaks. The other local youth entities would be able to use our grounds, and we will be responsible for all maintenance, and we are building this into our capital improvement plan. Our location is within walking distance from the new affordable housing going up, from the future youth center, and from multiple schools and neighborhoods. We would be the only natural playground in Newburyport, and it would really offer an amazing different recreational experience for kids. Caitlin, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. To date, our community has raised almost $414,000. We're 27 cents short of that, and I'm about to give the school that myself because that's killing me. Our goal is to finalize the campaign by the end of the summer, or by the summer, to ensure we can have this amazing space and welcome the community. We have been saving funds from capital infrastructure. We have been seeking individual donations and support from the community. We are not eligible for funds from MSBA because we are a charter school, and therefore we need to reach out to other sources to try and make this become a reality. Can you flip to the next slide, please?
And I'm just going to talk we talked about this in our proposal, but I wanted to just clarify that we do have options to phase. Our hope is to do the entire project at once to reduce interruption for students and faculty, and also to keep costs lower. But phasing could include, and these were the phasing options that we included in our proposal, would be just to do the playground on the right side of the school, or that's option 1. Option 2 is play and field on the right side. Option 3 would include irrigation in that field. And then option 4 would just be the left side, which is, we call that the middle school. side for play and field. And so those are the different options for phasing. So if there are any questions about that from the proposal, but we really are grateful for the opportunity to propose this to your group, and really do believe that this space would be a wonderful addition to the community. And it would really also be an inspiring space for kids to play. We're really very open to making sure that the design feels wonderful for youth throughout Newburyport. So thank you. And I'll pass it back to Karen.
Perfect. Thank you. Just reiterating a big thanks for the consideration. And we are more than open to answering any questions now.
Thank you. Before I open it for questions from the committee, just a preface that in the process of discussing this project in terms of looking at eligibility generally, we did discuss, and it is reflected in the application, that when public funds are brought to and help support a private or even quasi-public endeavor, there's needs to be the public value, and that public value needs to be protected rather strongly through contracts, basically, agreements for easements and access, and terms of use and terms of maintenance. So the charter school is open to this, and certainly the success of any funding effort through the CPA would be dependent upon agreements satisfactory to both the charter school and the city.
Absolutely. We have been aware of that, and we are absolutely willing to comply.
Okay. A technical question. I note that the foundation actually owns the dirt. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. However, I believe that the RVCS would be in charge of operating and maintaining the new grounds, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I just say that because it's likely that both entities would need to join in the agreement with the city. Okay.
Understood.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee? Jen?
Yeah, thank you, you guys. I just wanted to, I know that there's a technical need to talk about the school's sort of unique structure, but and I should say I'm a parent of a current River Valley student, and deeply appreciate it. Just want to frame for the committee that, again, that as Karen and Lydia have said, that River Valley is a public charter school. It is entirely public. Access to River Valley is gained through a lottery, which kids in our community and neighboring communities are eligible for. So just want to make sure that we approach this thinking of this as while it is a charter school, not a traditional public school, it is a charter public school and a public asset of our community.
Thank you. Andrea?
Thank you, Jen.
Hi, just a couple of questions. Does this change the traffic flow at all, or the amount of parking spaces?
It does change the traffic flow. Currently, the traffic comes in through Perry Way, goes all the way around the school and comes out, and then back out onto Low. And this would change it so that there would be you would come in off of Low Street behind the school and then come out of Perry Way. This was a traffic flow design that was recommended. Actually, we've had a lot of meetings with the city and both DPS and also the planning department. And so this was a recommended traffic flow shift to ease traffic. And then the parking spaces, yes, this will change the number of parking spaces. There will be a slight reduction in parking on the site.
Not by how many, do you know?
I do know. And
It's just so tight. It's so tight. Just curious how many spaces you're losing.
I believe we're losing 5 spaces, but let me just quickly double check that.
Okay. And another question I had, I guess, while you're checking is I was trying to look earlier today at the references athletic fields, but there's no dimensions really given. I'm just trying to get a sense of like what the size of these athletic fields are in terms of how additive that would be to athletic field space in Newburyport.
I believe that we're trying to get a full-size field, and I don't know what a full-size athletic field is.
We don't know the dimensions, but we want the soccer league to be able to use it.
I'm just trying to figure out how a full-size soccer field would fit in between Low Street and the building. I would be interested, I guess, maybe to have some more information on the dimensions as it's drawn, because it's hard to get a sense from the scale.
We can get that for you.
We could get that for you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Jane Healy?
Hi, I have a couple questions. So if I see, or if we see anyone's hand go up, I'll stop talking and then you can come back to me. But I wanted to say, I really appreciate the emphasis on climate resilience. I know that area is subject to flooding and, replacing materials for more permeable materials is great. And so, it's exciting to see something like this proposed in the city. My question, I guess the first one is around public access, and we touched on having an agreement with the city, and I'd love to know if you've reached out to anyone in the city to talk about a potential agreement, and also just how to make sure that the public knows that they can access this after school hours. What measures you'll take to make sure that it truly is, because we know spaces that are publicly available and the public doesn't know, and so they don't end up using it. And so I'm wondering if you've given any thought to how to make sure the public knows that this is an asset for them to use as well.
Lydia, you want to take those?
Yes. And sorry, I also have the parking total, if that would help too. So just quickly, we're going to remove 13 parking spaces from the interior of the campus, but we are creating parking spaces along Perry Way, which is currently a private way. So the project is proposing 31 parking spaces in the interior and 22 on Perry Way. So that's a total of 53. And again, that is reducing the number on the interior of the school. So for just the first part about public access and knowing about public access, we are going to be really intentional about signage, both because of the natural playground and climate resilient work that we're doing. We're going to have a lot of signage educating folks about the different pollinator plants and all the different materials and things like that. So we will make sure that there is signage on the exterior of the playground and athletic field space. As Karen said, we also are going to work with any clubs around soccer and things like that for making the fields accessible for practice. So we would be reaching out directly from the school as well. And I'm sure we would love to have articles in the news about it and share on social media and other formats to make sure that folks know that it is open. Also, River Valley does work with a lot of different organizations that often use this space, so we would probably put out a call as well to let people know that of these new changes. And yes, we have met with the planning department and I believe, Karen, you have met with an attorney to ensure that we would be able to create an agreement that would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are fully prepared to write a memorandum of understanding and have an agreement with the city.
And the city has been receptive to that.
Yes, so far. Yes, and I think, I don't know if Andy is still on the call, but we've met with Andy since really early on in the project as well. So we've been trying to work with the city throughout. We are neighbors with DPS, so we have met with them quite a bit throughout this process because we all share some of the same challenges around this area around flooding and different things like that. So we've been in close communication with the city in a couple different departments since the beginning of this project.
Including the fire department. The feedback we're getting is that people would love to see people from the city would love to see the proposed traffic flow. They think it'd be better for everyone involved.
I see Andy's hand up, so I didn't know. Andy, did you have?
Sure, thank you. Just briefly on a couple of things, just to the extent it's helpful, if you let me know if you want me to elaborate. We have had discussions with the charter school about a couple of different things of this plan we're familiar with. I think, public services, the planning department. I don't see any major issues with this plan. There are obviously a little finer grained details that people always want to discuss. People are obviously entitled to individual opinions, but I don't see from a, sort of permitting perspective or traffic flow perspective or whatnot, that there are issues with this. We have discussed the parking layout and so forth. I have not yet heard from, I think Elisa Mead is the attorney for the charter school. I have not yet heard from her on discussing the language for, say, a public easement, but the way that I interpret that, the easement or public access easement would need to be recorded at the registry, run with the property, essentially in perpetuity, perhaps have a provision for a clawback of some type, of funding it, depending on some future condition. But I think in either event, one other thing I had contemplated was allowing at least some flexibility. Again, may never happen, for a long time, but if they need to reconfigure in the future to have some provision that allows equivalent space or something to that effect, just thinking about flexibility for, adjustments in layout in the future, if that should ever be necessary. But the primary piece, I think, is just that something be recorded. But other than that, I'm comfortable with the plan itself. I know there's certainly been discussion about trying to bridge a pedestrian connection between the new youth services facility and the schools along that section of Low Street. But we're generally familiar with the plan, and if you have any particular questions on any of it, let me know.
Does
Thank you,
that,
Andy.
would that agreement have to go through the city council, or how does that?
The public access easement?
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially, I imagine that Lisa Mead and I would look on the language together. Obviously, we'd want to come to agreement on how that's crafted, but in essence, that would go to the city council. The city council would accept the easement. It would be, in essence, under the CPA, it's a condition for the access to the funds. But that easement gets recorded against the property, and like I said, we can, try to make sure there's flexibility for future adjustments if they're needed. But it basically ensures that the public investment of funds maintains that public access. And that comes up periodically where we have sometimes, quasi-public improvements on private property.
Thank you.
I'll go to Jamie Gagnon and then back to Andrea. Jamie?
Hi, yeah, thanks. I just had a quick question. This committee and, the city's made a lot of investment in this particular area of town with respect to recreation. We got 5 tennis courts, a new baseball facility. I think later on the agenda, to talk about basketball courts over at the middle school. Will this facility, if built or funded, be available to middle school students? And the other way, are the middle school facilities that we're investing in or may invest in be available to the charter school students? Maybe that Andy was answering that question with MOUs and traffic, but I wasn't sure. I just want to make sure that the city's getting, maximum bang for our dollars as we make investments in this part of the city.
And actually, we're really hoping, Jamie, to use the middle school's facilities when we're under construction here. So we very much want this to be a reciprocal relationship. Lydia, I don't know if you want to elaborate on any of that.
Yeah, we've met with the principals of and emailed and had a community meeting as well this summer with folks from the Knock and Mullen. And I think the desire for collaboration is there. I think that especially with the youth center project and other projects like that, having more young people walking, biking, and moving around in this area will mean that these spaces are used very well. And I think my understanding so far at the charter school is that we do, the charter school walks over and uses the track a lot, and those spaces. The kids from the charter school are out in the community of Newburyport quite a bit. They do a lot of walking field trips, a lot of visits to other parks in the city. So definitely, I would say that the space, I think River Valley loves to be out in the community and would definitely welcome more people within the space. And as Karen mentioned in the beginning, anytime that school's not in session, after school, weekends, and school breaks, it's open to the entire public. But if it's a school to school relationship, things like that can get worked out within school hours as well. I think because of liability, they have to have like an open time to the full public. But if we were talking about just working with the middle school across the street, I think that that's a lot easier to do even during school hours.
Andrea, you still have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, just one more question. It just got me thinking about, obviously the potential youth center is something I think probably a lot of people are hoping happens, but we're not, it's pretty evident that we're not there yet. But I know in some of those discussions, there has been discussion of the need for a traffic study to potentially reroute some of Low Street. And I don't know if this is a question for Director Port, but are there any concerns that traffic from the charter school with this new reconfiguration backs up into traffic in front of a new youth center and the Knock? I'm just thinking of how congested that area is already at.
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, there's always a discussion about which project, whether it's youth services or the charter school or anything else, complete streets type grants and things like that. Routine city expenditures, how that is funded, but making a pedestrian connection, I think that whole section there, we're obviously looking to improve that, formalize something, have it fully meet code and be clear. We're also trying to recognize the natural flow patterns of kids. It might not necessarily be where we define, walkways. So we're trying to recognize those kind of things. But I guess we have had discussions about this. I do think we need to continue to pay attention to that section on Low Street, the south side, just to make sure that obviously, other than having, of course, working to get a good sidewalk connection there, that any queuing that's happening, that sort of the way that flows, I think the charter school has a pretty rigid way of handling that maybe a good way of balancing things out here. But the queuing of vehicles for the Knock and the youth services facility and the charter school, depending on the times, of course, and how those things are adjusted. It's not a long-term issue in my view. It's just that there should be cooperation, I think, between those different facilities, depending on the times and the queuing flows. But I do think this plan is a reasonable way of handling both the parking and the flows with the attention paid particularly to that section, that shorter section between the new driveway entrance off Low and down to sort of the end where it meets Hill Street, really.
And we did do oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Sorry, that was just me coughing. Apologies, I'm going to mute.
No, we did our engineer has done some queuing exhibits that after review, we decided that we'd have 2 lanes of traffic queuing behind the school, or two rows of cars at the same time. And when we've done some car counts at pickup and drop off as well. And when we did that, we really would only get to the Armory and not all the way to the youth center if we would get those 2 rows of cars in. So we were working on the design to ensure that that wouldn't be an issue, especially, and I do think like the timing of how school dismissal happens is also I think we all work really well together, where the Knock and Mullen, they dismiss earlier, then we dismiss a little bit later. But you're right, there would definitely be quite a bit of pedestrian traffic heading to the future youth center if that happens. So we have talked a lot with everyone in planning about sidewalks and traffic safety. I think that's one of the big priorities for this plan, is to create one side where there's vehicular flow, and then making sure that pedestrian access to the site is very clear and that it's not crossing vehicular flow as much as it is currently.
Jane?
Thank you.
Jane?
I have a question about sort of the budget and phasing. And yeah, it's obvious you've done quite a bit of successful fundraising already, which is amazing. Yeah, really great. Excuse me, sorry, I'm losing my voice. And then, with these additional funds, should that happen, there's still a significant gap and to get to that 1.3 million. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what you're doing to close that gap, and also what the impact would be if we recommended less than the full amount that you're asking. We are being asked, for total applications, more than we actually have funds available. And so with larger projects especially, we ask if it can be broken up into phases, which you already addressed, but I'm just wondering about your approach and the impact on the success of the project.
It would be more costly to do it in phases, which I worry about. We feel that once we break ground and get some traction going, we can generate the rest of those funds within our community and through some small grants that are specific for things like this, outdoor projects. Lydia?
Yeah, I think the only other thing that I'll say about the way things are currently set up, we could continue to have our current traffic flow and do that as a second phase as well, while still putting in the playground on the right side and doing the athletic field and playground on the left side. When the traffic flow changes to be the one represented in this image, that's when the athletic field on the right side gets to be put in, because currently there's parking and traffic flow going around that side of the school. So I think, the phasing is possible. We've really, we've hit the ground running with the fundraising, and we'll continue to be submitting grant proposals to foundations that fund capital projects. We've just started doing community fundraisers just within the school community, and we'll be launching more opportunities for fundraising to the general public, and also reaching out to other businesses in the area. So, we really do have a robust fundraising plan to meet our goal. And we also have plan B to maybe not move the circulation right away. And, I think the school really does feel that the priority is to address the play space first and foremost because of the safety issues. And so I would say that is a huge priority for this coming summer, so that next school year we have a new playground ready to go.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I will thank the presenters and move on to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Hill Street Gardens Phase 2 of 3, brought to us by the Back Bay Neighborhood Association, requested amount $9,000. And who's presenting tonight?
It's myself, Christian Hansen, and I have my neighbor, Jeff Talmanson, who should be on the line.
Hi. Okay, well, you have the floor.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This is our second time back here to talk with the CPC. So appreciate your time and your consideration. My name is Christian Hansen. I live on 29 Hill Street. Like I mentioned, I'm joined by my neighbor, Jeff Tomlinson. He's at 21 Hill Street. And our proposal this evening is on behalf of the Back Bay Neighborhood Association, the Newburyport Department of Public Works, the tree warden specifically, and our proposal is for funding of Hill Street Gardens. Now, both Jeff and I are residents here of the Back Bay Neighborhood the Back Bay Neighborhood in Newburyport. I've been here for about a decade. Jeff, on the other hand, has been here for well over 25 years. So a couple things as a reminder, you might be wondering, I thought the Back Bay was in Boston, right? No, it's not. It's actually named after a very small dead-end street which is Boylston. And so that's how we have the name. The Back Bay Neighborhood Association, or the Back Bay neighborhood, is bordered to the north by Greenleaf and Pond Street, to the west by Route 1, and to the east by State Street. And there are roughly 100 residences in this neighborhood. And this number's grown recently with the addition of the Hillside Sustainable Living Community, which is much to our delight. You can go to the next slide. We actually have a mission statement, and that's to enhance and preserve the quality of life in the portion of Newburyport known as the Back Bay. And while the mission statement is simple, it's my unofficial statement is much more simpler. And that's to get to know people who I live around. And that only happens when people know and respect each other and are proud of where they live. So we're a very active neighborhood association. You can go to the next slide. We get together for block parties. We have annual food and toiletry drives. We do holiday caroling. We've done hot chocolate socials. But at the core of this is advocating for our neighborhood and those things that may positively or negatively affect us. So just as a reminder, we've worked with Glee Woodworth to help to straighten headstones in Highland Cemetery. Some people might think it's a little bit squeamish living across the street from a cemetery, but it's actually a public meeting point, frankly. Dog walkers are meeting up there, families are riding bikes, cross-country skiing. And so we've made it our mission to really maintain the space under the tutelage of Glee. Next slide. We had multiple block parties. We usually have about 100 people. It's all family style potlucks where people donate for the common good. My only job here is making sure the piñata is full of candy. So starting in COVID, slide number seven. During COVID, we've started doing food drives and toiletry drives. So for our neighbor's table, Pettingill House, Greater Newburyport Elder Pets Fund. And since that time, the neighborhood has donated over 1,000 pounds of food. So you can go past slide 8 and we'll go to slide 9. So last year we came to you requesting funding to remove this unsightly and ragged fence that has served for a very long time as a backstop for leaves, as a barrier for snow removal. And frankly, it's just plain ugly. It also blocked off access to hundreds of yards of beautiful and tree shaded green space. So let's go to slide 10. So we are incredibly grateful for this community for approving our grant request last year. And the resulting change to our community has frankly been remarkable. This new fence that you'll see in just a moment opens up the pathway, which is substantially more inviting. It highlights the landscape, and truly it's been embraced by the community at large. So on slides 11 through 14, you can kind of roll through here. The transformation has really been remarkable. This was the before, and then here's the after. So it's an attractive fence. It serves the purpose of separating us from the Fulton Pit. So you can go on to the next couple of slides, which are just kind of for your viewing pleasure. There we go. And so we're going to talk to you about phase 2. So phase 2 for the project would involve removal of 3 invasive and dead or diseased Norway maple trees. The stumps would be ground down, and there would be replanting of 3 new native trees. So slide number 16 shows that in consultation with different landscapers, we've identified oak trees as the replacement because they're native to New England, they're a non-invasive species, and their root system would allow for them to be much more durable versus the Norway maples, which everybody knows they're kind of teetering over it at this point. So the maple tree removal. There have been 3 different trees that have been identified. 2 would be on Hill Street, and 1 is on Boylston Street. So if you go to the next slide, these are those trees that would be slated for removal. So go to the next slide here. This is a very crude rendering of what those replacement oak trees would look like. Obviously, there would be stump grinding that would take place ahead of the replanting of these. Okay, slide 20. So this is a reminder of the area that we're talking about. It is above the Fulton Pit. It's bordering Hill Street and Boylston Street. So on this diagram here, the green treetops are the existing trees. The yellow dots are the diseased maples that would be removed. And then the smaller green treetops are the new replacement oak trees. Slide 21. The cost of the project that we're asking for is $9,000. And this would be to remove the old Norway maples, the grinding of the tree stumps, and then the replanting of the 3 new oak trees. Stakeholders in this project, you can see them listed here. So obviously the mayor's office, the Department of Special Projects, working with Kim Turner, Ward 2 Councilor Jenny Turner, the residents of the Back Bay Neighborhood Association. Jeff is here as an abutter who is going to be talking a little bit about his support. And then we've been able to generate over 35 neighborhood signatures. And most importantly, the Newburyport tree warden has given his sign off on this. So you can see on slide 23 that this is a letter in support from Mike Hennessy from the Parks Department. And you likely know that he serves as tree warden. Okay, slide 24. So you may recall, if you were on the committee last year, that we had asked for a 3-phase proposal. The first phase was what we've already accomplished. And again, thank you so much for the funding for that. If you have a chance to drive by, it's a beautiful looking fence. I didn't think that a fence could look so beautiful, but it's a beautiful looking fence. We had identified our phase 2 as doing native plantings, removing the trees, even perhaps putting up a welcome sign. And then phase 3 of solicitation and of some artwork, some local artists, and then installing it in the space. Now, we've altered our phases a little bit more. So this is the last slide here, or slide 25. We altered this to reflect a more thoughtful approach to this project. So what we're requesting is funding for the removal, the stump grinding, and the new tree planting. And then we'd like to take a more pragmatic approach and consult with a landscape architect to really determine the best way to beautify the space. So we would be coming back likely hat in hand asking for this funding for the consultation with an architect, landscape architect, and also for the native plantings here. And then finally, we would like to put in some artwork there, but both phase 3 and phase 4 are TBD. And frankly, it's mostly because we didn't anticipate the aesthetic difference that this new fence had made to this corner of our neighborhood. So we're kind of loving the way that it looks now and really want to take a thoughtful approach to what that next phase would look like. I'm going to cede over to Jeff, who just has a couple of thoughts as a direct abutter.
Yes, thanks, Christian. And thanks to the committee here for your consideration. As Christian has said, and I really can't emphasize it enough, the seemingly small event of replacing and changing the location of a fence has made an enormous impact. It's beautiful, but it's not just the aesthetics, which are undoubtable or undeniable and important, but also for safety. Just a point in fact has been the recent weather we've had. It's a whole lot easier for the city to maintain the sidewalk in front of that area. And it's safer to be walking, as a pedestrian on and off there. I am an abutter. As Christian said, I've lived here 25 years. I'm in full support, fully endorse this project. It's beautiful. I think it reflects not only nicely on our very special Back Bay neighborhood, but also on the entire city. So thank you again. And I'll go back to you, Christian.
Yep. So that is all that we have here. And if there are questions, we're certainly able to answer those for you.
Yes, I have a question on the new planting of or planting of new trees. Will you organize the interested neighbors to be sure that the gator bags are filled with water for the 2 or 3 seasons?
May I jump in? I, in
Sure.
fact, recently installed a spigot on that side of my house for that very purpose.
Okay, great. Jane Healy, have a question.
Actually, Mike, you stole my question about maintenance. But I wanted to say, I don't live in the neighborhood, but you guys make me want to. I mean, it's just, it's awesome what you're doing, what the association is doing. And I really feel, when I hear these things, I just feel really lucky to live here and have neighbors like you guys. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jane.
Biff, you have a question?
Yeah. First of all, yeah, I would like to just thank you all for this project. These small projects that make small little differences, I think are amazing, and I think we need dozens more across the city like this. My one question though is just on the new phasing 2, 3, and 4 that you've made. I'm just curious why why 3 doesn't kind of come before 2. I can understand getting rid of the dead trees for sure, and any of the trees that are not non-native, but why not, before you even start with the new tree planting, do some the consultation at that point? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, no,
order.
yeah, it's great for sure. Yeah, it's a good question. And we did actually talk to 2 separate landscape architects, or one landscape architect, one landscaper, and one of their biggest feelings was, if you try and do some native plantings in this space, the majority of those trees have fairly deep roots and are kind of clogging up that space. So better to kind of open it up, allow more sunshine to get in, remove those dead trees, and you'll have a better chance to have some more productive plantings in that space. That was kind of the first reason. The second one is that we actually had, and I think Caitlin probably is going to hate me for this, or hated me for this, but we came with 3 separate proposals. The first one was actually doing some plantings in this space, and in communicating with our neighborhood, it really kind of came out that we weren't quite sure. We didn't want to come to you saying, "Hey, we want to put, goldenrod here, or blueberries, or whatever it was going to be," until we really thoughtfully kind of walked through the process. And so I think that the acute need is getting rid of these kind of old trees. And then that'll give us some time. Maybe it's next year, maybe it's 2 years from now, to really be thoughtful about how we want this space to look as we go through a series of seasons.
Hey, Joe Texera.
Yeah, have you guys had any discussions at all with the tree commission? It seems like the new trees you want to put in are going to be essentially street trees.
We've not talked with the tree commission. We again got approval from the tree warden, but no, we have not talked to them. The idea of the oak trees was presented to Mike Hennessy. He was in support of that. But if there is an additional layer of approval that we need to get to, then we'll certainly do that.
It would seem only right to at least discuss with them and see if they're the sorts of trees that they'd be interested in. But I do know Mike Hennessy will be in constant conversation with him too. So, but you might want to check and make sure.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the advice.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, thank you, presenters. Move on to the next. We have the Ermid Garden Project from the Resiliency Committee. Requested amount, $102,500. And who's presenting tonight?
I can present, or at least I can start with the presentation. Julia Godfredson. I'm the Conservation Administrator for the City of Newburyport.
Hi, Julia.
Hi. So I don't have a slideshow tonight, but you do have the application up here, so I can run through, just give you a brief summary of what the project is about. And it's interesting because it really almost mirrors almost exactly what the Hill Street neighborhood is trying to do with their plot of land, although I think we're coming at our projects from slightly different points of motivation, but the end result might actually end up being very similar at the end of the day. So just to give you an overview of this, the idea for this project actually came from one of the conservation commissioners, our vice chair, Steve Moore, who I believe might also be in attendance tonight. He's worked with Pollinator Power Works in town, and he's very familiar with the work of Doug Tallamy, who's a professor at University of Delaware, and started this national organization called Homegrown National Parks, whose effort is to try to reduce the sort of lawn and paved areas throughout our country and connect open spaces with more areas of native landscaping, where we have so many acres of just straight mowed lawn in our country, and even in Newburyport, that's really not productive at all in terms of habitat, climate resiliency, water quality, air quality, or anything else, and in fact can be very detrimental to those functions. So Steve wanted to kind of bring that concept into Newburyport and find a location where we could do almost like a demonstration project for how you can take an area of unused lawn. It's not an active park space. It's people aren't playing soccer out there. It's really just an area that's mowed. It's mowed, it's fertilized. You have to weed it. Sometimes you need herbicides or pesticides in these areas. And there's leaf blowing in the fall. All of these things, not only are they harmful for air, water quality, soil quality, and even noise pollution, but they're costly to the city. We have to spend resources for the mowing and for all of these chemicals and watering and things like that. So this project would be an example of how you can sort of transform an unused area of lawn into a highly productive, natural, native landscape that provides value for pollinator species, for other wildlife, for birds, for improving soil quality, helping with climate change by sequestering carbon in the soil and in the trees and in the shrubs and the different layers of vegetation that you would plant. Making sure that all of the plantings are native and complementary to each other so that it's a functioning, healthy landscape. And it would also be beautiful. And that's our other goal, is to create something that not only functions on its own sustainably without the need for watering or mowing or raking in the fall, but that also looks beautiful and can be enjoyed by the public as not just an aesthetic resource, but also a recreational resource, which is one of the reasons why we're applying for CPC funds, because we strongly believe that this will also be available to residents throughout the city, especially in this location at the entrance to the senior center, as a recreational resource for passive recreation through gardening, through interpretive signage, and school kids who are right nearby at the Bresnahan could easily access this area to study local ecology, to study pollinator species, to study succession and things like sustainability. So there's just so many benefits to this project. And again, the interesting piece is that it's very, very similar at the end of the day to, I think, what the Hill Street neighborhood is trying to accomplish as well. We're just coming at it from sort of a different motivation, I guess. But there's also an ADA accessible pathway, as you can see on this diagram, that was put together by Kim Turner, actually. She helped us with the concept for this and did a beautiful plan that shows a meandering walkway that would go through this landscape. It'd be about 1,100 square feet of replaced grass with these native trees, shrubs, and pollinator plants, the pervious walkway. A bench would be there in the middle, just off the walkway where it sort of curves in the middle. And then we would have also some signage, which hasn't been developed yet, but that we would develop. for helping people understand what the goals of the project are. And then in addition, we want it to be a model and an example for others in the community on how they could take a piece of their lawn, maybe in their backyard, or someone out in the industrial park, which has these huge areas of mowed lawn, and transform it into something that not only costs less to maintain, but is more beautiful and functional. So that, I hope that gives you a good overview. And there's some photos that Caitlin has, I think, up here that are from our application that show what the area looks like now, which is, you know, it's lovely. It's a beautiful lawn. Again, it's also similar to Hill Street in that there are some street trees there that are invasive. I believe we did meet with Mike Hennessy out there as well. He's in favor of the project. We got a letter from DPS about it, but they hope to take down these Norway maples, and they've already actually planted a row of oak trees, which are the small saplings that you can see kind of interspersed in between the large maples just along the roadway there. And those, yeah, so you can see these small saplings are actually oak trees, and the goal is to have them start to take down the invasive Norway maples. And then we've already got a great start on this landscape that we're trying to create, because the oak trees are what you'd call like a keystone species in New England as a native landscape. Like the previous applicant said, they have really strong root systems. They support a tremendous number of local pollinators, caterpillars, butterflies, etc. And the leaves are excellent fertilizer for the soil and all of that. So I think that's it for my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. And I don't know if Kim Turner's here. She, again, did a wonderful job helping us put together that sort of concept design. We worked with Molly Janicki, who's a local landscaper, and she did the actual species list for us. And we met with Mike Hennessy, who agreed that we could use water from the senior center for the initial watering phase. We talked with youth and recreation services about getting some of their gardening programs to help with the initial weeding and things that need to take place during the first couple of seasons. But after that, the goal really is that it should be self-maintaining. It really should not need any kind of maintenance.
Hey, thank you, Julia. I see Biff has his hand up.
Yeah. Well, thanks for pulling up the design. Actually, that's what I had a question about. So you've got in the kind of curved pathway, and then it stops, and then it looks like kind of the last third of it, up to High Street is all just still. Is that all still lawn, or what's
Yes.
the thought process there?
Yep, and that you're right. It is all still lawn up to High Street, and that's really because we didn't want this to be too big of a project. Number one, just because of resources, we do have to buy all the plants and establish this whole thing initially, but also because, you know, we understand that not everybody wants to see this kind of landscape right up front, and we didn't want to, you know, ruffle too many feathers right away with bringing it all the way to High Street. Some people do like a view through the existing lawn. And this provides this sort of as like a happy medium, gives a balance.
Yeah, I live just around the corner and come through here, and I've thought about this basically unused except for dog walkers kind of spot on both sides, and then there's kind of connection back to back around near the school there. But yeah, I was just kind of curious as to why this wasn't just continued forward, or maybe we can explore at another date, like what to do with that space closer to High. But thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Jane Healy.
Thanks, Julia. Anyone reading through your packet knows that, yeah, I'm in support of this. As it's coming from the resiliency committee, but I wanted to, you touched on it at the very end, but could you talk a little bit more about that initial maintenance phase? I know that long-term, you don't expect a significant amount of maintenance, but who will be doing it? And is there, just if you can explain a little bit more about how those first couple of years
Sure.
to get the plantings established.
I'm not a landscaper, so don't have all the details on this in the top of my head, but my understanding through talking with Molly and Mike and the other people who contributed to the project is that while it should be self-sustaining in the long term and really shouldn't require very much of any maintenance, initially you have to get things started and you have to keep the weeds out. You have to get things established with enough water right off the bat and keep the weeds out for the first couple of seasons. They do expect the ground covers that are planted to be able to sort of take over and prevent the weeds from coming back in once they're established. But there is that initial, we were thinking probably the first and second growing seasons at a minimum. We would need to have some people out there just pulling weeds, making sure things are watered if there's a dry spell, and that kind of thing. Again, the trees are already planted, the oaks, so we don't have to worry about any large trees. It's really the shrubs and all of the rest of the plantings, which there are many of. So those would need to be taken care of just until they establish. And we did communicate with the Newburyport Youth and Recreation Services Department, and they have a gardening program that they have in the spring and the fall and the summer. So they wrote a letter, which is, I believe, part of our application, that they would have their program help out with that as necessary. And it wouldn't be a lot. We were estimating something like, a couple hours a week, maybe at the most. So for like a group of people.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I will thank Julia and move on.
Thank you.
Next project is the Atwood Basketball Court Restoration. Parks Commission, amount requested $26,880.
That would be me again. I think you're going to see me for the rest of the projects tonight.
I think you're right, Kim. I
Yeah.
think you're right. Yeah.
Thank you again for your time tonight. Caitlin, you can just go to the next slide here. So we are requesting a small amount of money for this project this year. The Atwood Park is just over a half an acre park located in the heart of the South End between School and Atwood Streets. It was established in 1976 on the site of the former Jackman School, which was and also directly across the street is the William Lloyd Garrison Homestead. There's actually a couple of interpretive panels in this park that describe the legacy of Garrison and also point to his house, which is directly across the street here. It is one of the few open spaces in the South End, and this park is very heavily used by the surrounding neighborhood. You can always see people strolling and walking dogs and playing in this small park. It contains Garrison Gardens, some benches, and the half-court basketball, which is at basketball court, which is at the heart of what we're asking for tonight. In 2022, the CPC did award a grant for $33,000 to install some lighting in the park, and that's what you're seeing in the picture on the right here. That is the project that was done just a few years ago. Next slide, please. I think you skipped one. There you go. So this is the half basketball court. It really is sort of tucked into the middle of the park behind some hedges. It is quite old. It is definitely cracked and not in the best condition. We are requesting $26,880 to pressure wash, repair the puddles and cracking, and then resurface the court and repaint the lines. We also are proposing a new quiet backboard, which we've been using in all of the projects recently, and they are, and especially in dense neighborhoods like this, they are quite welcomed for really reducing the noise from play. Next slide, please. So this does hit a lot of public benefits, which was described in our application. Again, it's a densely settled area of the South End, heavily used. This does meet the Parks Commission's strategic plan core value of promoting health and wellness, as well as a couple of our open space and recreation plan goals and the city's master plan. And if you want to just go to the last slide, it will sort of show better exactly the area we're talking about. So School Street and Atwood Street, this park is tucked between those two. There's a large open lawn area. to the right of this drawing, that's where those lighting fixtures were installed 3 years ago. And then Garrison Gardens is to the left with the homestead directly across the street. And the basketball court is tucked right in the center of the park. So that's the area we're talking about. And I can answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, well, thank you, Kim. And your next presentation is the Knockmolen Playground repaving.
Yes.
$199,642.
Yes, thank you very much. So carrying on here, we'll just skip to the next slide. We believe that the pavement of this area of the Knockmolen School is original to the building. So we believe it was, towards the mid-century. It is severely cracked and degraded. It contains a couple basketball courts as well as foursquare and a large kind of open space that is enjoyed daily by students to use during recess and throughout the school year, as well as residents of Newburyport off school hours. Next slide, please. This project is just under $200,000 to repave the entire area that you see here in the photograph, as well as to replace 4 basketball hoops with, again, those quiet backboards that I was just telling you about, as well as restriping, again, for basketball and for foursquare. Next slide, please. This does hit a lot of the public benefits, again, supporting active recreation for upper elementary and middle school age children during recess, as well as all residents at off-school hours. One of the other key things here that this does maximize the utility of land already owned by the city. It has been on the city's capital improvement plan for several years now, so it would be highly beneficial and is a priority of the city to get this project done. And it does meet one of the key goals of the open space and recreation plan for the city. And the final slide here, again, will just show an overview of the area we're talking about. You can see the Knockmolen School kind of in the lighter white color. And then the playground is highlighted in red. It's that L-shaped element there. And I can answer any questions.
This is presently it's all paved. Is that correct?
It is all paved. Yes.
Okay. Jane?
Kim, is the plan to repave the entire existing area that's currently paved?
It is. That's what the quote is for.
Yeah, I've had a child that went to that school and you're driving by and just, it's always been a little bit of a sad area, and a lot of it is due to the poor conditions of it. But I'm wondering if there was any consideration, knowing that you need that surface for the basketball courts and the foursquare, any consideration of adding trees, breaking up at least the area between the school itself and the basketball court, or
yeah, it's a good thought. It's not something that had been proposed for the project right now, but I could certainly speak with the members of the school department. This is sort of a group effort between the mayor's office and the school department to get this project funded. I could certainly go back and ask if they would be open to adding some trees, especially maybe along the front, along Low Street.
I would think that would be nice, if they, appropriate trees for the area, but at least to provide shade, because, and just have it a more interesting space. I would like to see something like that. Thank you.
Andrea Wheatman?
Yep. Hi. I agree with what Jane just said. I wasn't going to raise that, but I do think adding some trees, just even certainly for shade for the kids. I feel like they're in school for much of June these days and it's hot, but my question was just going to be with regards to repaving it. It's staying the exact same size?
Yes.
No changes to the size. Okay. All right. That's my only question.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay. Thank you, Kim. Moving along. The Atkinson Common Lily Pond Coping Parks Commission, the amount $79,200.
Thank you. Yes, moving right along here. So we'll go to the next slide. So I know you've heard this from me before. We've come before with numerous requests for Atkinson Common over the years. But just to give a brief background here, this 21-acre parcel was donated by Eunice Atkinson Currier in 1873. In 1894, the Belleville Improvement Society, which I should note is still in existence today, which is a local neighborhood group, laid out the paths and plantings. This is our highly formal Victorian park in the city of Newburyport. It's our second oldest park in the city. The upper park, which a lot of people don't realize, it's all part of one sort of overall park, but the upper park is the area from the tennis courts all the way to High Street, and then Lower Atkinson is the area where the Pioneer Fields are. But the upper park was improved between 1892 and 1929 with the help of the Belleville Improvement Society. Next slide, please. This is just a good overview, which sort of shows all the elements of the park. The lily pond is that kidney-shaped element that you see sort of midway along the axis between the Civil War Memorial and the Rock Tower. There is a footbridge that goes across the center of the lily pond, which allows users to experience the fountain. There's a fountain on either side of the pond close up. It is a highly important contributor to the formal and scenic character of this park. Next slide, please. So originally there was coping stone around the entire edge of the pond. It has lifted off, and what you see today is sort of this unsightly adhesive. And so we are coming before the CPC this year to ask, next slide please, for funding in the amount of $79,200 to repave that coping stone with a new 2-inch thick bluestone stone that would encircle the edge of the pond. And the existing base material would stay in place, so we wouldn't be impacting the pond itself. We would just be adding this coping stone on top. Next slide, please. Again, this is one of our oldest and most visited parks in the city. It provides multiple recreational uses, from active recreation and tennis and ball play to passive recreation, strolling through these highly ornamental Victorian gardens. It supports one of the Parks Commission's core values, promoting health and wellness, as well as preserving our historic resources in the city, as well as supporting two goals of our open space and recreation plan and a goal of our city's master plan. Next slide, please. And again, just an overall view of the park so you can see where the lily pond sits in relation to the other elements of the park. And I'll take any questions.
Jamie Gagnon, you have a question?
Yeah, real quick, excluding the Pioneer portion of the park, how many, you said it's one of the more widely visited. Do you have any idea how many people actually use Atkinson Common or visit during the year?
I don't. I could probably find that information for you, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
I for one, can indicate that I use it about 5 times a week. So I have a comment really, Kim, and that is, I think that if I remember correctly, your application indicated that it was a recreation category.
Yes.
It is in a park, but to my thinking, it is one of the historic aspects of the park, similar to the gazebo and the rock tower, such that I think you might hit 2 of the categories with one application here. So,
A good thought.
Any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, thank you, Kim. And we
Thank you.
have moving
Last
on
one
to
tonight.
Cashman Park guardrails. $34,934.
Great, thank you. And I think we can move right to the first slide. Thank you. So again, brief history of Cashman Park. This park was created in 1922 by Mayor Michael Cashman. He actually filled in tidelands along the Merrimack River in order to create this park. It's 18 acres, comprised of playgrounds, sports courts, soccer and baseball fields, a public boat ramp, and is also the northern gateway to the Clipper City Rail Trail. Again, we've come before you a couple of times now with requests from the CPC. In 2023, one other time before with the CPC. In 2023, we were able to resurface the tennis and pickleball courts as well as 2 basketball courts, thanks to the generous funding of the CPC. This year, we're coming before you with a slightly smaller request, and that is, if you go to the next slide, to replace the guardrails along Pop Crowley Way. This is a picture of what those look like right now. They are galvanized guardrails. They're in terrible condition. These guardrails help separate the shared use off-leash lawn area, which is immediately behind the tennis and basketball courts, and lead all the way up to the condos at the southern edge. Separates it from the adjacent access drive, which is Pop Crowley Way. These are in great disrepair. There's several breaks along them, which could potentially allow vehicular access. Next slide, please. What we're proposing to do here is to replace the metal guardrail with a new wooden rail. And the picture on the left here is the rail that we just installed at Lower Atkinson Common last year with CPA funding. It would match this railing. It is 352 linear feet, and the picture on the right, it's faint to see, but the faint yellow line there is the entire length of what we are proposing here. The cost estimate that we have, including contingency, is $34,934. We can probably skip over the next slide. I kind of went through what the public benefit was, which I think is similar to the other projects. And then here's just an overall view of the park. And again, the railing would be the lower third of the park between the basketball courts and the River Run condos. And I'll take any questions.
Biff, question?
Yeah, so I assume that wood is like pressure treated or some sort of treated wood. What do we know what sort of lifetime these things are expected?
Yeah, it would be pressure treated. And I believe it's somewhere around probably 30 to 40 years.
Well, longer than I'll see. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, Biff, your hand is still up. Do you have a follow-up?
Sorry, I just didn't lower it.
Okay, good enough. Well, thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Any other business from the chair or the planning director? I have no further business for this meeting. Andy, how about you?
Nothing unless there's anybody has any particular questions about it. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will open that up. Does anybody have any questions about what we did or heard tonight? I would ask Caitlin if we could ping the folks that were from River Valley who were going to get back to us about the size of the field, the playing field.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Let's see. Sorry, through the chair. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead, Andy.
Mike, I defer to you. It just occurs to me, in terms of follow-up items, given the discussion that we had about the charter school application, it may be beneficial to expedite language or clarity as to the public access or easement related to that application. If that's being recommended, it would be good to understand how that's being crafted in part. I'm not as concerned about the entire length of a document like that so much as I do think it'd be good one, to know that for the CPC's purposes, and two, I think it's a question that may come up with the council, and sorting that out one way or another would be beneficial. So I'm happy to reach out and work with them on that. I did indicate that previously, but just because we haven't looked at language yet, and I presume under the statute that that's something that needs to be required and dealt with here, then it'd be good to sort that out in some way so we can be very clear with folks about that public access, again, without prejudicing or making being too presumptuous about whether the committee would even fund that one. So.
Right, yeah, without talking about that end of it, it was my assumption that if any appropriation was recommended for that project, that it would be conditioned on a satisfactory document to be negotiated and drafted by the respective council for the city and for the charter school. But I think it would be helpful for us to have some indication of the elements that the city would be looking for, in just bullet points possibly.
Yeah, I guess my point is just that, well, certainly it can be a condition, and I wholeheartedly agree that that's how it can be mechanically dealt with. I think it may be beneficial here, having seen incidents in the past and disputes, it may be beneficial to iron out a detail like that. Now, we don't often have park applications. We tend to, obviously, for good reason, be funding city projects that are on public property, that are directly owned by the city. And I have no objection to this application or the plan per se. That is not way an indication of that, but rather, I do think it's important to iron out a little detail like that rather than leaving it as a condition. I have often seen things fumbled around after a sort of broad brush approval, and then there's a finer grained detail that's actually substantive. And in this instance, I think I would rather work with their counsel to know how that's worked out in language beforehand, if possible. So thank you.
Yeah, and Andy, in the usual course, when you've got counsel for the applicant, how do you engage in that preliminary negotiation to arrive at elements of a memorandum of understanding which would find their way into an easement? Yeah, what's the steps? Do you engage city council in that effort this early?
Again, I'm only going from my best practices based on what I know of how the mechanics work, as well as some of the parties involved. I have not always agreed with, unfortunately, their counsel may not be counsel I've always agreed with on matters. So I do think it's preferable, in my view, to have language that we agree on as to what that should be now, rather than leaving that to a finer grained debate later on. I would prefer, I think, in context, to have that worked out. I don't think it's a heavy lift. I think it's a very simple thing. Actually, it comes down to relatively few words. But I do think it'd be good to know that and have that prepared. And frankly, if I were a city councilor, I would probably be asking the same question in some way. And again, specificity is more beneficial to me than the sort of vague notion. I have no issue with the project. Great improvements, and so forth. No issue with that whatsoever. But I do think where public funds are being put in here, it's understandable under the CPA that the taxpayers expect to be able to access that public space. And here, if it's going to be publicly funded, we should make sure that is makes sense. I have not always seen language that I feel is consistent with the intent of something before, so I would like to make sure that does come out right here. Just on that very fine, simple point. It's only comes down to a couple of words, basically. But
okay, Joe Texera, your hand is up.
Yeah, with regards to the field size, I did a very quick measurement on my map, and that's going to be somewhere on the order of 100 by 50 feet or 60 feet, which apparently it's around the size of a age 6 to 8 soccer field. The other thing is that whole project will be in front of the Conservation Commission on March 4th. So folks may or may not want to tune into that too, to see how that goes along.
Okay, thank you. Andrea Wheatman? Andrea, you had your hand up?
Forgot to unmute myself. I guess further to what we were just talking about, the discussion around, it sounds like there's been a lot of meetings with with DPS in the city on the change in parking and the queuing and even like the parking spaces on Perry Way, but I wonder if we don't maybe have some more information to look at from the city. I'm thinking of like the Lower Atkinson project last year. We had a lot more information from the city on how that was going to be managed, and we didn't seem to have kind of a lot of detail on that. It might be interesting to have that for the next time, just to make sure it's been thought through.
If I may,
Sure.
we can, the Office of Planning and Development can reach out to Public Services, but we could, put together some sort of summary comments, if you will, in terms of feedback of any questions or concerns that came up, or the adequacy of the plan that, we're all sort of, have been looking at to this point. So
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Jane?
There is a wetlands issue at the back that I think still needs to be permitted by the commission, just to be clear, Conservation Commission. And I don't know whether that will result in issues. They're obviously trying to minimize impact, but that is something that needs to be permitted. But, just other than that, I think we can, pull together some comments that Public Services, I know, having spoken to them, the director seems to be comfortable with the plan that is being proposed here, from what I can tell.
Okay. Jane Healy?
Yeah, I agree with Andrea on that. And I think confirmation anyway from the city would be helpful. But I also wanted to just say that I agree with Andy with, any information that we can get, any forward progress, acknowledging that we have not deliberated and nothing has been decided, would be helpful for that project in terms of legal language or just progress toward, because it's a significant ask, and it would be a real shame if we did decide to recommend funding for a significant amount to tie those funds up to later see that things fall apart due to, just the agreement not coming together.
Okay. Andy, do you want to, you and I'll discuss how within the next month we can focus on arriving at elements of that language, so that
That would be great. I think that
we know
would
at the
not
front end. Yeah.
That would be great. Certainly working with you on that, given your background, would be great. I think it'd be very simple to do in a relatively short order, if they can turn around on their end. Shouldn't be difficult, but I just want to make sure it's something that is consistent with the statute and does ensure that the residents of Newburyport have that access appropriately. There's not any kind of convoluted language in there. So thank you. That's great.
Okay, we'll do that then. Anything else from the committee? Anyone? Okay, I understand that the minutes from the 30th, January 30th aren't prepared yet, so we'll hold off on approval till we get the draft. Anything else from any committee members? Remember that we're next to meet in 1 month, and be prepared to have a fun night and make our deliberations. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
I knew I could count on you, Chuck. Okay.
I'll second.
All right. And I'm sure we're all in favor. So good night and thank you again.
Good night.
Thanks all.
Good night. Thank you.